since we're streaming on multiple ones. I don't know if the comments will come through evenly. We'll figure it out. Whoa, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. My name is Paul, PF Jung on YouTube, and I am trying to humbly make Enlightened Centrism great again. In order to do that, I have asked the wisest person who works for the DNC to come here and question me on my Trump curiosity. So hello, your viewers and mine.
I would say I'm the second wisest person at the DNC. I'm sure like Hillary Clinton had an intern there who's like still number one. But yeah, I want to challenge your Trump curiosity. For those fans of Paul who are not familiar with me, my name is Josiah. I go by Pondering Politics. I have a left-wing political commentary channel on YouTube. No drama, no red pill, no culture war stuff. So if all you care about is what shoes the M&Ms wear and if there's a black elf in the latest Lord of the Rings thing, stupid shit that doesn't matter.
Or like the social cohesion of our society.
If that's all you care about, that's I'm not your guy. Oh no! What happened? What did you do?
Oh, I didn't do shit. What did you do?
No, what did you do? You did this on purpose.
I swear to God, I did not. I don't know how to.
Why do you hate me?
Don't.
Hang on. Okay. Well, you're gonna have to entertain them real quick because
I'm being gaslit in real time. Everyone.
You are not. This is censorship.
Okay, I didn't do shit.
Okay,
I don't think I can turn off. I can mute you, but I can't turn off your camera.
Hang on. Let me try to change it real quick.
Oh my! Listen,
you had one job, Paul. One job.
Prior to us starting, I plugged in my Ethernet cord, and it died for like 6 minutes. Yeah, so this has been a high production value show so far.
Yeah, hang on. Just
go ahead. Okay,
you talk. I'm going to
take I'll give some background. I have some prepared statements. First off, I love the state of Israel and everything they do, and I will never criticize them under any circumstance. And I appreciate Mossad and CIA and everything they do. The very first video I posted 3 years ago, I said, and this is a direct quote, I fucking hate Donald Trump. And in many ways, I still do. And I voted for Joe Biden in 2020. So just so everyone's on the same page here, I am very worried about political polarization. And we can explore. I'm not here to debate necessarily. I don't think I'll ever convince Josiah to vote for Donald Trump, and nor do I necessarily want to. I'm more interested in I'm more interested in someone as wise as Josiah dissecting my perspectives on why I'm Trump curious. And that is why I've brought him here. So can you hear me?
I can.
And have you returned? Yeah. What did you like trip over a wire?
No, I did not. I went to my camera, found out what was going on, and there was an error message that said Paul fucked this up, and then I had to unfuck it up.
That's what PF Jung stands for.
Yeah.
Paul fucked Jung up.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, did you hear what I said?
I did not, but that's okay. I'm sure you did.
Very emotional and heartfelt. Yeah. Basically, I said I voted for Biden in 2020. The very first video I posted, I said I fucking hate Donald Trump, and I do, to some degree. But I do think this comes down to it's Trump. If it is Trump versus Biden, I got to pick the lesser of two evils, in my opinion, and for the reasons that we will go into, I think Trump is the lesser of two evils. Now, do you have any immediate response to that?
Everything you just said was wrong, but my question.
You sound like my mother.
Well, yeah, young man, eat your veggies.
Yeah.
Okay, so two things. Number one, I guess not that it matters because I agree to have this conversation anyway, but is everything you just said sincere? Like, do you genuinely believe, as of this moment, that Trump is the lesser of two evils, or are you overstating your position for performative antagonism?
Yeah, okay. So this is
you and I can banter.
I know. We should clarify this, and this is something I've learned in my course of being online. I legally everything I do is comedy, so I can dispute it and back away from it from any time. But I do realize that's annoying, especially to people who have no prior contact with anything I've talked about. So I will, in the spirit of sincerity, and I'm genuinely interested in actually hearing, because I think that the reasons that I have for believing that Trump is the lesser of two evils, which I do sincerely believe, I think are valid, and I'm curious to hear what your perspectives are, particularly because you are absolutely not the, stereotypical like uber far left, use culture war progressive, which
Mm-hmm.
I do think are, but I do think that is where we will need to explore, because what you dismiss as culture war issues, I think, are deeper. And I'm not necessarily interested in, like I said, I don't want to debate the specifics of individual ones. I'm just trying to get you to understand where I'm coming from, if that makes sense. That's my goal here.
Sure.
Is to genuinely try and get you to understand why I see things the way I see them.
Well, in order for me to gently and would love challenge your views on why you think Trump is the lesser of two evils, you need to make the case to me. So can you articulate to me why you believe that Donald Trump, and I assume we're talking about the same Donald Trump, not another Donald Trump.
That's correct.
Why he is the lesser of two evils ahead of the 2024 election.
Yeah, I think my biggest specific political issue is immigration. And I trust Trump to handle the issue of illegal immigration better than Joe Biden. That's one simple one. Broadly speaking, I think Trump is more likely to resist the extreme elements of the sort of Christo-fascist aspects of the right than I think Biden is able to resist the uber progressive nonsense on the left. Although that certainly has been thrown into question as of late with the whole Israel-Palestine situation, which I do want to talk to at some point, so we will reserve time for that. But what do you think of those two initial points?
Well, so, okay. Well, the first one is, I'm kind of surprised. Well, let me, I guess, before I address the immigration part and whether or not Donald Trump would, I don't know, whether or not he would better resist the fringes of his party and his movement.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want out of an American president? What is the American president to you? Because if you agree, if you prefer Trump on immigration, I suppose there's a legitimate opinion to be had in good faith there, although I will challenge some of your conceptions on it. But is all the chief executive of the country is to you as a guy who enforces the southern border? Or is there more to it than that? Are there bigger things than that?
Obviously, there's bigger things to that. He's also he's the head of state in terms of negotiating with other countries. And the other big issue is endless wars. And we talked about this. I don't know. We talked about Ukraine and Burisma with Hunter Biden, I think.
Well, we did on Twitter. I spanked you. And
you think Trump would be more likely to not get us into. Oh,
I think there was a delay. I hear you just fine.
Oh, hello.
Can you not hear me? Don't do it, buddy. Don't do it.
Josiah, are you there?
I am. I am here. I am. I absolutely am. I am here. I can hear everything you say.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's okay. That was on.
Can you hear me now?
My computer. I've been criticizing. I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Perfect. I can. Continue.
Okay. I've been criticizing Israel a lot, so you know how that goes. So what was I saying?
So you're talking about Ukraine and Burisma.
Yeah, I think Trump would be. Trump is the leading voice, at least rhetorically, against being involved in Ukraine unnecessarily. And I don't know to what degree. I actually don't know what his current stance on Israel is and getting involved with, supporting Israel and everything they do without any conditions, because that's apparently the default U.S. policy stance towards Israel. But yeah, so what do you think of that?
So I think this is going to be like part and parcel of the issue. I look at you and I think, have different conceptions of what the chief executive of the nation is. And ironically, for somebody who's a culture warrior, you seem to boil it down to like specific policy initiatives, which I understand. Those are very important. But when I think of the president, I think of somebody who's supposed to be the chief representative. This is the one national office that's elected in all 50 states, right? Others are senators and representatives and governors.
Yeah.
He's the head of state. Yes, he's the head of government. He dictates, or rather shapes, foreign policy. He doesn't have total control over it. He's arguably the nation's chief law enforcement officer because the attorney general reports to him. Mm-hmm. Generally speaking, presidents shape legislation, agenda. They're the ones who propose in the States of the Union and everything. They propose an agenda, and Congress is usually pretty reactionary. They shape the federal judiciary. right? So this is
Yep.
there is no person in the United States vested with more authority, moral authority, political authority, legal authority than the sitting president, the most powerful person on the
Sure.
planet.
Agreed.
And you trust Donald Trump
More
in
than
that
Joe
position.
Biden.
Okay. Do you not
Joe
think
Biden is a rotting corpse. Hold on. Maybe we can get because we should come from the same set of facts here, maybe.
Sure.
Do you agree that Joe Biden is in utterly deplorable health?
No, I think the actuary tables indicate that he's actually in better health than Trump. He certainly exercises more. He has lower body fat. Has a healthier diet. No. And there's only 3 years.
Okay, that's
separate them.
interesting. Okay. Yeah. So to me, I take it sort of for granted that Biden is like collapsing in real time, like the way he just passes out in the middle of meetings and stuff. And maybe Trump does that too, and I see less videos of that.
Well,
to be fair, Trump is not constantly doing speeches and all that stuff.
well,
But I don't think I believe that certain Biden is like pretty much mentally gone, and Trump is not equally, but Trump is. It's concerning that the two options are fucking 80-something years old.
Right. So what I would say is President Biden a beacon of health? Not as far as I can tell. He's 80 years old, as you said. I mean, he has stiffened gait. His verbal agility has declined. All of these things are true, and he's a gaffe machine. There's no question about it. Would I say that Joe Biden is in a state of age-related cognitive decline the way that most people are? Yes, I think so. I think Donald Trump is too. And I think if you've been paying attention to politics in the past 6 months, you could be buried in an avalanche of gaffes. Trump forgets where he is. Trump thinks he's running against Obama. Trump confuses Jeb Bush with George Bush. Just all the things. He constantly says he won this state and that state when he lost by a certain margin. He constantly confuses things. And even the mainstream media is starting to report on it more. The difference is, I would say Trump's decline has been more rapid, and he was never that experienced or intelligent to begin with. So, like, for example, who do you think understands politics better? Like the intricacies of the dynamics between two countries, let's say Israel and Palestine. Who do you think understands those things better? Who understands the history, the leadership, the trivia, the details? Biden?
Probably Biden. Yeah.
No, it shouldn't be probably. Obviously,
Sure.
if you put pen and paper in front of these two men, gave them no smartphones, no advisors, and said, answer these questions, Joe Biden can still substantively address issues of foreign policy. He was the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Donald Trump never could. So when it comes to politics and statesmanship, Joe Biden even now has infinitely more to grasp than Donald Trump. So I would say that both have their cognitive issues. Just one also happens to be a malignant narcissist and a pathological liar and an idiot, and the other one's Joe Biden. Do you have any refutation of that? Is Trump not a narcissist?
Well, again, look, I'm not. I'd be curious if you send me a compilation of Trump's recent cognitive decline moments. If we took the 20 worst instances of Trump's cognitive decline in the last 6 months and compared them to the 20 worst instances of Biden's, I strongly believe the Biden one will be overwhelmingly more terrible. But
but that's also, I mean, that's kind of baked into the premise. One is the current chief executive giving constant speeches and tours and, working as the nation's chief executive. And the other one.
Yeah, but that criticism, I would never levy that criticism against Obama or any other president prior, or at least when they were. I don't think at this point in Joe Biden's presidency, he's the most in cognitive decline than any other previous president at this point, I would assume.
Maybe, but again, I think it's age-related, not matters of judgment. That's the other thing.
Okay.
And Trump is in it too.
Well,
so then it comes back to, again, the other things too, since we're talking about facts.
Mm-hmm.
Which one is a narcissist, Biden or Trump? And if you think you might cop and say, "Oh, I'm a centrist," they're both narcissists. Then I'm going to ask you which one's more of a narcissist, and you will
probably
Trump.
Be
forced. Probably. Paul, see, this is where it's going to be a challenge, Paul.
Have you ever met someone and known someone for a very long time, only to find out years later that they're actually an extreme narcissist and like an extremely different person than you thought?
Do you know Joe Biden?
I don't know either of them. No, but
do you have any evidence based on these two men have been in the public eye for 40 years? Do you have any evidence that Joe Biden is as narcissistic as Donald Trump? Really?
No, not at hand, but
That's no, see, this is what I'm saying. So, you know what it comes back to, ironically, is the broader conversation of what you and I talked with the first time we had a conversation, and you told me that you were reclaiming the definition of enlightened centrism. Because I said,
I think I've pivoted to politically non-binary though, but go ahead. We'll stick with enlightened centrism.
I appreciate that. No politically gender fluid or whatever. So I think that the problem is you're actually demonstrating when it comes to Trump and Biden, my fear, which is when it comes to centrism, you're starting to show signs of the centrism that you and I both said we disdain. Because you told me when we first had the conversation, you said, Josiah, listen, enlightened centrism is this idea that, for every one right-wing position, or you have to have a left-wing position and vice versa. And you have to
I'm conservative on some issues and I'm progressive on others.
But you told me, no, you're picking your policy positions a la carte. And I asked you, I said, so what if they end up clustering at one end of the distribution? You said, that's fine. You're still an enlightened centrist as long as you pick them a la carte.
Sure.
And yet I said, well, my problem is enlightened centrism, I think, lends itself well to false equivalences and double standards, where you have to manufacture a balance between two things where one doesn't exist. And so when I ask you a question, who is the bigger narcissist than Donald Trump and Joe Biden?
My honest response to that is,
I
think you are vastly ignorant in the degree to which someone's public persona can be utterly different than who they are as a person.
And I think because we have to make evaluations.
Trump is a dumbass who lies to your face, and he knows he's lying, and he knows that he's lying. Clinton or Biden, I believe, are just as nefarious behind closed doors, and they put on a public persona.
See, even that is the problem. We make evaluations based on evidence. I can point to infinitely more evidence of wait a minute. I can point to infinitely more evidence of Trump's narcissism than you can of Biden's. I win, you lose. So just take the L and accept that Trump is the bigger narcissist. Prove you're enlightened centrist.
Like I said, look, one of the things I've learned to embrace is that I, at 27, am an idiot. I know I'm an idiot, and it will take some time before I ever make any big difference in the long run. So in the meantime, I'm happy to just show my cards up front and tell you, I'm not trying to convince you, and I'm genuinely not trying to debate. I'm purposely not jumping in as much as I might otherwise in the past, when I was an ignorant fool thinking that debate is what changes people's minds. This is an entirely different discussion of maybe what we can do is maybe next month or something, or a couple weeks from now, we can come back and we can come up with a list of what you just said. Evidence that Trump's a narcissist for evidence versus Biden. I bet if I spent 3 hours just digging through and asking everyone I know who's an intelligent conservative, hey, what are the worst instances of Biden's personal conduct? I bet that list would be far more at least equivalent than you're implying here, because I can't pull it up at hand. That's because I'm not interested in, like I said, winning the debate. So the fact that I can't pull the evidence as of right now is not, in my mind, an indication that you're correct. Take that what you will.
So you think if you spent 3 hours polling conservatives, you could come up with a list that matches mine on Trump's? You totally should do that. You should do that.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. Listen. This is the advantage of a long-term reciprocal relationship.
Yeah,
of which we are now engaged in one, whether you like it or not.
We've been in one. We've been exclusive for some time.
I know it's been kind of been up in the air, but we'll come back to this, and I will clip you saying this, and then I will provide my evidence. So we can go. So we'll go through this.
So to me, what I'll say is this. So when it comes to matters of personal character, political character, when it comes to policy and record, when it comes to aspirations for a second presidency, Donald Trump is just unqualified to be the president of the United States. And this is what I mean. I'm just kind of shocked that even now, after all the evidence, because presumably you're aware of things that he said on the campaign trail, how he's attacked the media, how he says he wants to investigate and prosecute not only his political opponents, not just the Bidens and the Obamas and people who used to work for him. He said he wanted to try General Mark Milley, his former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, for treason. He hinted that the punishment should be execution. He's also talked about, wanting to prosecute MSNBC because he doesn't like MSNBC's coverage of him. Joe Biden has never said shit like that.
Well,
just close to it.
Well, first off, there's been no shortage of Democrats who've said that Tucker Carlson should be banned off Fox News, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So
is that the
idea
same
that the
thing as a
media
prosecute? Is that the see? This is what this is.
Go ahead.
Paul, you just created a false equivalence there. Is a Democrat saying that a person shouldn't be spreading propaganda the same thing as saying, as the nation's chief executive, I will leverage, it will be my goal to leverage the powers of the government, the state, against the media? No, these are not equivalent. They're not. You know they're not.
That's the way that you just constructed that analogy. Well, it's obvious. I couldn't disagree, even if I wanted to.
But you just offered that when I brought up Trump threatening to use the powers of the state against members of the media.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a different theory of, I guess, what's concerning. So, for example, let's maybe one of the lessons from what happened in Nazi Germany was that it wasn't just a top-down, Hitler did these bad things and told everyone to do it, and they all just followed the orders. It was bottom-up. Their neighbors participated, ideology crept over a nation, and that's what went wrong. So when my fundamental concern as an enlightened centrist is polarization. And I regard the underlying ideologies on the right and the left and the right version is Christo-fascism, which is a serious threat. I think Mike Johnson's a serious problem, or a lot of his beliefs are. And then on the left, you have the just anarcho-progressive uber bullshit, disintegration of all categories, et cetera, that you, by your own admission, don't even pay attention to, which is partly why it's difficult for me to take everything you say with the credence that I might otherwise lend it, because there's so much that you just dismiss as it's not important that we don't have enough time right now to explain to me why I think it's important. But so when you say what's more important, the head of state saying the specific thing or the entire media, it's kind of like, well, I view them as mouthing the same ideological talking points about censoring their opponents, and whether it's the head of state or the entire media saying Tucker Carlson's a white supremacist, he needs to be censored, or whatnot. And this is repeated by certainly Chuck Schumer and many in the Democratic establishment. It's like, I view that as problematic, certainly in the same way that Trump going after fake news and whatnot is problematic.
The problem is right there, again, the entire thing, you're moving the goalposts. Okay. So we're not comparing Donald Trump, a man, to what you perceive to be the entirety of the progressive left or the censorious progressive left. We're comparing Trump and Biden, two figures who who both have.
I don't think you can separate those.
I think
that's my fundamental issue. I don't believe that you can separate those. I believe when we say culture war, I know what you mean, which is like Mr. Potato Head. I'm talking ideology versus ideology. Like for example, on immigration. I believe, the sign that says no human is illegal?
Sure.
I believe that ideology, as someone who supports dreamers and wants every kid who was here when they're like 1 year old to be a citizen, because if you grew up in this country, you're a fucking American, whether or not you happen to be born here 6 months prior. I do not believe that all illegal immigrants should just be granted citizenship. And there is absolutely an ideology that says no human is illegal, and we need to, we're not up to, Chuck Schumer said we're not replacing our population well, so we need immigrants. We have to embrace immigrants and all stuff, which is like, in theory, sure, but that is very easily hijacked to just allow endless amounts of illegal immigration, which has certainly gotten worse under Biden's regime, but that's not a fair term. So what my point is, that extreme progressivism, I think, is more likely to seep its way into let's say the presidency than the Christo-fascism is with Trump, because whatever you say about Trump, he's not a Christian, and he's more progressive on a lot of the Christians on, for example, abortion. He's very much against the heartbeat bill that DeSantis put forward. And I just don't see...
He also said that he wanted to criminalize and punish women, jail women who participate in abortion when it violates the law. He said that with, I'm blanking on the MSNBC interviewer's name, Chris Matthews. He said to Chris Matthews when he was running for president in 2016. So he's like, do you think there has to be a punishment?
I thought he said, I've heard footage of him saying he's pleasing the Reagan rule: safe, rare, and legal. So,
well, Trump.
Has he changed his position?
Well, wait a minute. See, this is actually the problem. So Trump being a pathologically lying, malignant narcissist in a way that Joe Biden simply isn't, and you'll never be able to prove. He says various things, disparate, incoherent things at disparate various points in time whenever it's convenient, because he has no ideology. He's a narcissist. He cares only about himself. So he'll say something on Monday when he thinks it's convenient, and then he'll say something completely different on Wednesday when he thinks it's convenient. As a matter of fact, he was at a rally a couple of months ago touting his plan to cut taxes. And then when the topic turned to, I think it was trans people in sports, which I know is near and dear to your heart, the crowd got riled up.
I wouldn't describe it as near and dear to my heart.
And he even made the observation. He's like, wow, how about that? Once upon a time, you all cared about cutting taxes. Now you don't care. It's all about trans people in sports. And then he began to milk it. So he'll say one thing at one point and one thing at a different.
Well, I think that's okay.
There's less.
First, that's not that convincing to me, because every politician will say whatever their base
understand,
wants.
but see, this is the problem with enlightened centrism. You say, I point to it. To me, it's almost like saying, you know, Josiah, yes, this person committed a crime, and sure, it's murder, but other people commit other crimes too, like carjackings, and all crimes are the same. I understand that politicians, by definition, are professional hypocrites, but it is worth recognizing meaningful distinctions when evidence of those distinctions exist. And I feel like you don't acknowledge that. I feel like you're too quick to create a false balance between these two people.
I understand your perspective, I think. So here, let's just ground the conversation right here. Like I said, genuinely, and I know I did not frame it like this, but I'm not interested in debate per se. First off, I've seen your videos. You put 3 out a day out. Okay. If we were going to have a debate about Trump versus Biden, I'm severely short on evidence and you are severely in high supply. That's not my goal. I'm more interested in understanding, first off, I guess, getting you to understand my perspective, as I said, but also I'm curious to understand how you approach the things that I'm concerned about. Again, like what you said about like the overwhelming evidence, like it's obvious that Trump is more morally decrepit than Biden.
Yes.
And I to me, that's so obviously unprovable. And again, like having lived, my experience is such that someone can it's very easy to present yourself in a certain way and have your personal life be the exact opposite. So, you know, but that's just an example of the kind of thing where, like, you know, you're putting forward, and I agree, I'm like in a debate, you know, I just lost. But again, I'm not.
Somebody clip that right now. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. No, look, no. I fucking hate
the title. I want that to be the title of.
I said at the beginning. I said it at the beginning. And what would be really good is if I got an intelligent conservative, like, I don't want to put any names here, but I have an idea.
You're gonna be thinking for a while.
Yeah. But maybe what we'll do is I'll bring you and then someone else on, and then I'll be the, okay, Josiah, what do you have to say to this? Because this person is as equipped as you are, except from the conservative side. So my question for you, this is one question, because this is what I hear. This would help me understand the anti-Trump mentality more. Walk me through what
pro-democracy mentality, the anti-fascist.
Are you against populism?
I think populism is. I think there's
what elites call democracy when they don't like it.
I think no. I would say
David Sachs' line. I just stole that from him.
I think that there is a danger to populism. Populism makes me wary. I don't know if I have like an inherent objection to it at all times, because it also depends on how you define populism. But the radical populism that I think manifests in like the Freedom Caucus or like large elements of the Republican Party and some aspects of the progressive left online in particular, yes, it troubles me immensely.
Okay. That's fair. Walk me through what the worst case scenario is if Donald Trump gets elected.
He's actually kind of laid it out explicitly. So right now, the Heritage Foundation, which is a really prominent right-wing think tank, is concocting this thing called Project 2025. And it's actually available in PDF. It's like 1,000 pages. And it's basically, it's It's contingent on this notion called unitary executive theory, which is like this constitutional legal theory, which says the Constitution empowers all, literally all, executive power in one person, the President of the United States. So there's no such thing as employee protections or independent agencies or special counsels who can't be fired directly by the president. Literally, the federal government is under the personal purview of whoever the president happens to be. Now, most people say, no, the founding fathers and everybody, they didn't intend to make somebody a king. And even though the president is individually, as we talked about at the beginning, the most powerful person in the country, there are supposed to be certain little checks on their power. So the Federal Reserve, which dictates monetary policy. You don't want somebody like Trump or even Biden, for that matter, going in and saying, listen, I want you to change the interest rate to this, 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 and this, and just change monetary policy on the dime. There's supposed to be ways that Congress and the judiciary can truncate the president's power. So Project 2025 is an attempt to address that. So he wants to basically go from 4,000 political appointees to making every federal employee at-will employee and staff them with Trump loyalists. He wants to take control of the Federal Elections Commission and the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, and the Fed. He also has talked about invoking the Insurrection Act to deploy the military in violation of the Posse Comitatus Act, which prevents the military from being deployed in law enforcement, on the very first day to prevent protests, which he also talked about, by the way, at the end of his first term. He had to be active. He was threatened with mass resignation of his White House staff and Justice Department if he went through with it. So he wants to deploy the military. He wants to direct his attorney general. He wants to separate the because there's this idea that the Justice Department is a quasi-independent branch under the presidency. He wants to get rid of that, make the attorney general somebody who's not only a political appointee, but who will literally pick prosecutions and individual investigations at the pleasure of the president. He wants to erode these things and target the media, Democrats, and his political opposition. It's incredibly dangerous. He's also talked about potentially running for a third term, which is constitutionally illegal.
He has talked about running for a third term?
Yes.
What has he said on that particular?
So he says that after he wins his second term in office, he says because Joe Biden indicted me, he set the precedent that anybody who runs against you, you can indict them. So if I want to run again and the person running against me is leading in the polls, I can just indict him, which predicates a third presidential term. Unless, of course, he's an idiot and cognitively impaired. So it's kind of
so he didn't. Well, hold on. So did he say he will run for a third term, or what did he?
He said that if he ran again after his second term, which the one after 2 is 3, I believe.
Oh, I see.
But I believe in woke math, I guess. So
okay. Well, what I should have asked you at the beginning was, can you steelman what what is it? The 2025? What is it called?
Project 2025.
What if you were to steelman the 2025? Like what from their perspective are they? The Constitution
says that executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States. It doesn't mention any other positions. It doesn't, kind of only hints at a cabinet. The cabinet's not mentioned in the Constitution explicitly. And therefore, all executive power is meant to reside in the president. And therefore, this is in line with what the framers intended. Okay. And then all that stuff about installing Trump loyal. What's the vision for the country they want? Are they trying to kill immigrants? Conservative one. What is the... Okay, what is that? That's my question. Well, to them, it's like let's say Trump gets elected. This happens. So he deploys the military against his critics. He prosecutes people in the media. He prosecutes Joe Biden, the Obamas. He prosecutes former Trump loyalists that he thinks defied him. He has talked about a sweeping immigration pogrom led by Stephen Miller involving detention camps and going in and... You said pogrom? Yes. Seeking out millions of undocumented migrants and getting them out of the country, which would be a colossal waste of manpower and probably civil rights violations abundant. So, I have a couple thoughts in my head. First off, the word that jumped out was pogrom. I'm not super historically literate. In fact, I'm not historically literate at all. But I believe... Like the pogroms are like some of the worst atrocities, and it's like equivalent to a Holocaust in terms of its severity, not
in terms of the intensity, not necessarily the scale. You think that would happen? Is that your ultimate, one of the ultimate fears, is that if Trump became president, that there would be mass killing of illegal immigrants?
Yes. He's also talked about, I mean, it's not just Trump, by the way. This is something that Ron DeSantis has also talked about, shooting people at the border without due process or anything like that. Yes, this is, I don't know what the probability would be, but
shooting people at the border?
But the fact that it's above zero, that it's more above zero based in their rhetoric than I've ever heard, is itself a case for alarm.
What specifically did Ron DeSantis say about shooting people at the border? In what circumstances did Ron DeSantis say he would be okay with border agents shooting people at the border? Do you mean like innocent civilians with their children?
Well, generally,
people that have committed crimes?
That can be a bit hard to determine without due process. Just
do you understand? Right, but do you get like?
I understand. I'm listening to you.
I heard pogrom, and then I heard DeSantis shooting people at the border, and I'm thinking somehow, I bet if I watched the same clip that you're referring to, that it wouldn't quite be exactly what you just said there.
Well, no, it is.
Like DeSantis, look, DeSantis what it sounded. Okay, the image that I got when you just said is that DeSantis believes that, like a mother and her child crossing the border, he will allow the border agents to shoot them on sight if they try to cross the border.
And I'm saying
now, he could believe that. That's a possibility.
And I'm saying that may not be DeSantis's intent, but I believe if he gives Border Patrol carte blanche to just shoot people at the border, that will happen more often than it should. How about that?
Sure. Well, I mean,
when you create an ethos,
if we allow, and if we,
how about wait a minute? How about when you create an ethos, when you state your ethos for law enforcement is essentially to shoot first, ask questions later, to send a deterrent message, that you'll probably end up with more dead immigrant mothers and children than you otherwise would.
The counter argument to that is that with less illegal immigrants, specifically criminals, there will be less murder of citizens in the United States by illegal immigrants.
I don't know what.
I don't know the statistics. I don't know if it's a true argument.
I don't know.
I'm just telling you that's what the hypothetical
crime rate among undocumented migrants is as well.
You know what? I also do not know that.
Yeah.
What I do know is when George Floyd was killed, that set off a huge, obvious, massive reaction. Police shooting unarmed black men, I think the total number per year is about 20. So in any statistical sense, it is not nearly as significant a problem as
it has been exaggerated by elements of the online left. There's no question about that. Yeah.
So if an illegal immigrant kills citizens and that gets broadcast everywhere, I think I'm worried about that backlash as well. And that shit has happened repeatedly. It just doesn't get thrown into the news. But I think at a certain point there will be a backlash, like what's going on in Ireland. I do think that is the result of being too lenient on illegal immigration. Like I see no reason why can't we deploy the military to the border and say, the whole area is recovered.
So again, the Posse Comitatus Act of, I think it's 1885, prohibits the military from being deployed in civilian law enforcement. You'd have to invoke the Insurrection Act, number one. Number two,
I'd be okay with that, I think.
Gotcha.
To stop the flow of illegal immigration, because I do believe it's getting to the point where we'll have an unbelievable backlash.
You're comfortable with deploying the military against undocumented migrants at the southern border because of a potential backlash that could lead to something like Ireland?
That's one reason. That's one reason. But certainly, it's like saying, well, we can't enforce our border because of the potential of negative externalities.
Well, we can enforce the border. We can at least make a greater attempt to do so, but that would require comprehensive immigration reform, which requires Congress, which requires both parties. President Biden.
Sure, but in the meantime, I guess I don't see the issue.
That's fine. It seems to me like an over-escalation. I think it's over-escalation, and I would say a dangerous precedent to set. The idea that, again, you deploy the military for civilian law enforcement purposes. That's neither here nor there, because I understand where you're coming from. I just don't agree with it, at least without compelling evidence to the contrary.
Right, and I'm just shitting out of my mouth out loud just to
that's not where
get
shit's
your
supposed to come
understanding
from. That is not anatomically accurate. You should see a doctor about that.
Okay, let me
go ahead. Reframe. Okay.
Yeah, please.
So again, the thing I keep coming back to are what I believe to be false equivalences to justify the Trump curiosity thing, because you cited immigration and you cited foreign policy, but President Biden's policies and manpower and resources at the southern border are effectively identical to what they were under Trump. I mean, if you look at congressional budgets, if you look at the number of people at the southern border, Title 42, even before the court struck it down, we've had a record number of contacts indicating that the border isn't open. As a matter of fact, the southern border is being policed. You can say inadequately, but they're at least making a good faith effort. The only major difference with which I'm familiar offhand is that Biden is noticeably, but not perfectly, less cruel when it comes to family separations. So for me, if you want to talk about the southern border being under control, unless you have evidence to the contrary that Trump had infinitely more manpower and infinitely more resources and infinitely different policies, why do you think the border was different under Trump than under Biden?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. The rates of border crossings have increased dramatically since Biden took office. Is that correct or not?
They've increased. I don't know about dramatically, but they've certainly increased.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
They've increased.
I think it was Alexander Mayorkas who put out a statement, said that they're going to start rebuilding his wall, but he didn't actually use the term wall. They used barrier or something like that.
My understanding is that they fought it in court, that there were certain funds that were allocated to Trump's wall. If I remember correctly, the Biden administration didn't want to go through, challenge it in court. The court ordered them to allocate the funds accordingly, but this is going off memory from, as you say, 3 videos a day. So it's entirely possible that I'm talking shit out of my mouth.
Yeah, well, that's an example of the kind of stuff where I don't think, I assume that the
reason I'm asking, because this is the reason why a lot of Trump supporters or Trump curious people do this. They'll cite a thing happening or not happening while Trump was in office and give him credit for it. And that doesn't work for me. People wouldn't accept that for a Democrat. I'm sure as fuck not going to
say that again. They'll cite someone.
They'll cite thing happening or not happening under Trump and give Trump credit for it. So, for example, world peace. Trump did that. Well, how do we know Trump did that? Well, it happened while Trump was president. Well,
I see what you're saying.
So did that fucking solar eclipse that he looked into stupidly because he's an idiot in a way that Joe Biden isn't. But Donald Trump didn't manipulate celestial bodies to create an eclipse. So when somebody wants to give Trump credit for something, I need them to point to me a thing he did or didn't do, which created the thing in question. Because otherwise, just saying our southern border was better when Trump was in office, I'm going to say, well, what did he do? Because manpower, policy, resources are virtually identical. And when I ask most conservatives that, they go, it just was different.
Yeah. Well, look, as you know, well, first off, I'm operating a lot of feelings.
That's very progressive of you.
Yeah. So, and I'm glad that we've agreed that this first conversation is just setting the groundwork. I'll let you make your claims, and then we'll come back.
I believe we agreed in private before the stream went live. You said, Josiah, this is the one and only conversation we need to have, and if I can't produce evidence for my claims, I will.
It's game over. That's fair.
I believe I heard you say, not only will I concede, I will publicly commit to voting for Biden and every Democrat in every election ever.
I absolutely would instantly vote for RFK Jr. over Trump.
You son of a bitch. Yeah, that's an option.
Would you?
Independent over Trump?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Okay, that's my attitude. If RFK Jr. was a Democratic nominee, it'd be like, are you fucking dumb? Why would you?
Well, no, you gave me just to be clear, you gave me a choice between RFK Jr. and Trump. I'm trying to think of somebody that I would vote for Trump over, for Trump over. And I'd
vote for Bernie over Trump.
That's good.
Maybe not now.
I get it. He's old. Everybody's fucking old to you except Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a sprightly 77. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, so
you said you were going based on a lot of feelings.
Yeah. So, like, for example, I take it for granted that the rates of illegal immigration are much higher. And that concerns me. And my gut is that Trump will do more to address that issue than Biden. And I do think, hold on, first off, I do think deportation is a perfectly reasonable response to illegal immigration. Do we disagree on that?
No, I just don't think for asylum seekers, but yeah, I think deportation otherwise.
Okay.
Sure.
Who counts as an asylum seeker and not?
Unless somebody like came up to me, like one of the things that surprised me getting my hippie liberal education in college was finding out that undocumented migrants in the United States are a net economic positive, right? Never occurred to me. So for the question of deportation, somebody would have to make the case that either the deportation was done inhumanely, in which case I would object, or that it would be a waste of resources and it would actually be more fiscally responsible to just leave them in the country. Then I would be open to the idea that deportation is just inherently bad. Okay. But otherwise, no, I'm fine with Border Patrol
deporting illegal immigrants,
responsibly deporting people who cross the southern border when they find them.
Implied.
Now, asylum seekers, no. People, unless they're going to a country like, because President Biden made a deal with some South American countries whose names escape me at the moment to expand the number of people that they would accept who are asylum seekers so they don't have to stay in the United States without having to go back to their countries from which they were seeking asylum. So yeah.
Okay. Do you think that that what constitutes an asylum seeker it can be abused and is likely to be abused? I mean, what constitutes an asylum seeker?
I think anything can be abused, and I believe my understanding is it's like imminent threat to life or loved ones or something like that, and then it has to be decided. They can make the claim, and then it has to be reviewed in a U.S. court, and then the judge makes the call, which I think is reasonable. Okay. That's reasonable, but I think anything can be abused.
True.
And speaking of abuse, I actually want to turn the subject back though, because this is interesting. You're concerned about, southern border asylum laws being abused. And I think it's perfectly legitimate. Are you not concerned about laws and norms and traditions that a second Trump presidency might abuse?
I'm concerned about that.
Yeah.
That's why I said, and to this day, I fucking hate Trump.
I understand, but I'm not. I want to banter aside, and I like bantering with you. I know you don't love Donald Trump. I'm reason. You know what? Actually, to borrow what you said, honestly, it's unprovable. It's really unprovable how you feel about Donald Trump. So really, I can't know.
Funny.
You tell me. You tell me.
I'll tell you the truth. I'll tell you the truth. When I'm talking to shills like yourself, there's a very real part of me that's like, Trump, fuck yeah. And then when I'm arguing with my Fox News dad or my family, who are big conservatives, it's screaming matches the other way. So part of the reason I'm not inclined to push back as much on, or like, I didn't want to come, like I said, and I do want to talk about another issue in a sec here, but I don't just want to, the next time we talk, if we want to do a real debate, I will pull up the screen and give you 10 pieces of evidence of like, here we go. Okay, here are the things that shape my opinion about X, Y, and Z.
You dick. What do you think this was? Like, what do you think this was? You even you have no excuse.
I know.
My understanding was you bent your entire life and your schedule to this conversation, and you didn't even come prepared. I get it.
I know. Listen. I already have thoughts about the next time we talk and who I will invite. And
no. Well, wait a minute. I mean, I'm fine to talk to other people, but I also want the reason I want to have this conversation with you, because this is important.
Please.
Paul, I like you, buddy.
I know.
I think you're.
You keep saying that.
I think you're a straight up guy.
Yeah.
And it's important to me. Like, there are a lot of people out there in the debate space or whatever that I wouldn't waste my precious time on. And I say that again because I have no time with which to waste 3 videos a day and 2 jobs, and like barely hanging on by above an infernal fire. But when I hear you, somebody who says so sincerely that you want to reclaim the phrase enlightened centrist, for which again I have so much disdain, and you want to say, listen, it's not this reflexive.
You and the far right conservatives, but
I have to have a lefty position for every right position and vice versa. When I hear you say, I'm Trump curious,
it hurts you.
Despite, I mean, it's one of those things where what you will find, even if it's not me, it's destiny, it's whoever else, what you'll find is there's actually not a good faith argument to be made here. There's just not. Like and that's why I
believe you believe that.
Out. I believe.
Here's how I.
Oh, go ahead.
Here's how I would adjudicate this. I also trust you in ways that I perhaps should not, but I also don't trust you in other ways.
That's why you gave me your bank pen.
Right. And I sent you that photo of me in Maui.
It's my wallpaper. All right. Who wants to see? I'm just kidding. No.
But what would you think if I found someone by my own judgment who is pretty informed on the conservative side of it, who makes 3 videos a day from the conservative perspective, and I bring you and this person here, and when you say, Ron DeSantis said he will allow the border agents to shoot anyone who crosses the border with no questions asked. I didn't say that, but okay.
Okay. Yeah, it's fine. It's cool.
You implied it.
Yeah.
Then I can have that other person here and go, whoa, hold on. I saw that same thing. Because I don't like it. I do not pay attention to this to the degree. I don't pay attention to these things to the degree that you do, which is, and again, you're right. I should have made it clear. Perhaps we weren't debating, but I genuinely wanted to understand, like, okay.
That's why you're happy.
Here are my intuitions. Here are my feelings. Let me understand your perspective on them.
Sure.
And we can come back to it. But I do want to do that at some point. And I think that would be valuable for both of us.
Can I give you then just my, I guess, broad overview then of just the whole thing, and then you can process it and chew on it, and we can revisit it later.
Yeah.
So the way I look at it, the question of Trump versus Biden, I think Biden's actually been, all things considered, a pretty good president. I know a lot of people on the progressive left would say otherwise. I don't. He inherited an economy in the shitter. There are 14 million jobs created on his watch. Lowest unemployment in 50 years, lowest black unemployment, major economic metrics. The S&P did like record highs, I think, just a couple of weeks ago, at least as high or higher than it ever did under the Trump administration. The vaccine rollout, which allowed people to go back into the world relatively safely, allowed the economy to open back up. That was huge. The American Rescue Plan, which saved us from a double-digit recession in 2021. Donald Trump talked about how I want infrastructure week, and he promised it for 4 years. Biden got it done in once, thus demonstrating that either Biden or Biden's handlers are infinitely more competent than Trump and Trump's handlers. There's no argument around that. We arrive at the inevitable conclusion because Trump said he wanted to do it. I respect that he failed to do it.
You said handlers.
Yeah. That's fine. Yeah, because either way, the thing is, you're not, I guess that's kind of the through line here is you're not just electing a single man. You are electing the staff around him as well, his appointees, his judicial nominees, his cabinet secretaries, et cetera, and so forth. But the bottom line is Trump said he was going to do a thing, never got it done in 4 years. Biden got it done in 1 year, despite a highly divisive Senate with razor-thin margins. So the fact of the matter is Biden is legislatively more competent and effective than Donald Trump. That's not a matter of opinion. That's fact. What did Donald Trump get done legislatively? For every one thing you can name of Trump's, I can name 5 things of Biden's. You'll say.
Didn't you say earlier there's a big problem with people because the person's in president that it correlates with success, like the whole eclipse analogy you made? Aren't you doing that right now?
Sure, but I can point to its legislation that he proposed, authored, and corralled people to support. Unlike just things just manifesting, it's not like the infrastructure bill just manifested itself on his watch. I can point to specific things that he did. It was his legislation. His staff wrote it. The Senate debated it, and Congress debated it too and passed it.
All right, this is an important test of your credibility right now.
Okay.
What? Not even in your own opinion, but what would you, what is the 2 or 3 best pieces of legislation that Trump put forward? Steelman Trump's legislative record.
Probably the First Step Act.
That's one. Okay.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that one.
The American Heroes Act.
What's that?
That's the first round of COVID stimulus dealing with COVID.
Okay.
That was really good.
Fair. Like economic, like any big economic policy that you thought was pretty good?
No, not offhand.
Okay.
No.
So this is my fundamental issue.
Okay.
I don't think that you have credibly, as an enlightened centrist, I'm enlightened centrist. As an enlightened centrist, I'm big on Steelmaning.
Okay.
And I don't think you sufficiently Steelman the conservative side.
I think that the
and I,
not
being a conservative, do not feel the obligation to defend them, because the only person dumber than a socialist is a libertarian and a Christo-fascist.
Both on the right.
True. Yeah, and the socialists on the left, although they're kind of horseshit theoring around.
I'm glad we agree that the worst of the right is.
But do you get my point? Do you get my point? Because, for example,
no, I don't.
Let me just say this: I believe Trump renegotiated NAFTA, and it got like 86 votes in the House, and it was bipartisan, and it's universally regarded as a positive piece of legislation.
See, I don't know about that, because my understanding is he wanted to repeal and destroy NAFTA, and we basically got a lifeline.
And we did replace it, and it was passed almost unanimously in the Senate.
But I'm pretty sure, and I'll have to double check on this, that the net effects have basically been the same since Trump left office with his legislation. So that's the thing. It's not just like, for example, I could have cited the 2017 Tax Cuts and Job Act, except I don't consider that a good piece of legislation. So
okay.
So let me ask you. So when you say Steelman Trump's position, are you talking about what are his top 3 legislative accomplishments, period, or things that you think that he did that were good? Because
I'm saying if there was a mirror version of you, except he was conservative,
he'd be a lot dumber.
But let's assume he was intelligent, because I know you say that in jest, but clearly there are many intelligent people on the right. This is the problem. See, this is a comedy show, so I can't even make a sincere point like that, because I frame the whole thing.
It's not all comedy. It's not. Listen, this is the most serious show on the fucking internet.
Yeah,
you don't
exactly.
have a sense of humor at all.
But I know, and I'm sure your audience thinks I'm hilarious. So, but like, you get I'm fishing for information here. Excuse me, I'm fishing for information here, and I believe a conservative version of you would have a much, if you were able to Steelman the conservative side better than you, then I'd find it more convincing.
That's different. A conservative would say, okay, the 2017 Tax and Jobs Act, they would say nominating and confirming 3 Supreme Court justices, radically revamping the federal judiciary by packing the federal judiciary with young conservative justices. They would cite the First Step Act, maybe, if they were a bit more on the
Abraham Accords.
They would cite the Abraham Accords. I think their importance is overstated. They would probably also cite the fact that he moved, that he recognized Jerusalem, and switched the embassy to Jerusalem. They would cite all these things. I just don't necessarily grant that, because those are accomplishments that conservatives would cite, but I would challenge whether or not those accomplishments are good. So that's the difference. I thought you were saying, hey, basically name to me 3 things Trump did that you thought were good. And
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Determining what the effect of a particular legislation is very difficult.
Right.
As all economic analysis.
You also interrupted my summation. Basically, the bottom line is this. Okay. The reason that I think that Trump is unqualified for office, it's not just his personal shit that he does in private. The fact that he's a serial philanderer and fucked a porn star, I don't care. I like using that as a cudgel to beat up on Christian conservatives for their hypocrisy, because I think that's important. I think it's important to. Yeah, it's fun. It's like, haha, you're part of a loser cult. For worshiping.
You think Bill Clinton should have been disqualified from president for his?
No, because I don't care. Because that's what I'm saying. I don't think that Trump is disqualified because he's a serial philanderer. That's my point. The only reason I bring it up is just to bully conservative Christians who pretend that Trump's like the Messiah.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. There's some personal characteristics which are divorced, pun intended, from the office of the presidency. Like Trump's lying, for example. If he confined his pathological dishonesty to his personal life, telling his wife that he's just going to grab a gallon of milk when he's going and fucking somebody that he shouldn't, that's one thing. But I would argue his lies, like particularly with the 2020 election, have had material and dangerous consequences for the American people. Because this is the point, so much of our country, and you may not value it, because I actually don't know how much of a patriot you consider yourself. I really don't. But so much
I like my country.
That's good. So much of the American project requires good faith, reciprocal good faith. This is not divinely crafted nor divinely enforced. Amen. So, for example, Paul, it's important that a sitting president respect the peaceful transfer of power. Donald Trump was the first one to shatter that tradition. Joe Biden didn't do it. Barack Obama didn't do it. The morally superior Democrats have never done that. Only Republicans, Donald Trump. That's important. That's a meaningful difference because we can't trust Donald Trump to recognize the peaceful transfer of power next time, whereas we can with Joe Biden, at least based on the available evidence. The fact that Donald Trump has again promised to prosecute and persecute people who he regards as critics. Imagine how you would react as much as you have your beef with Biden. If you ever heard Joe Biden say, you know what, I should turn my Department of Justice on Fox News. Fox News recently had to settle that defamation lawsuit with Dominion Voting Systems, $800 million, because they lied through their fucking teeths in a way that MSNBC and CNN have not been busted doing. So therefore, I'm directing my attorney general to scrutinize and go after.
Wait, did you say that they haven't, that CNBC and have not been?
CNN and MSNBC haven't been busted doing? No, not like that. Yeah.
Okay. I don't recall how much they had to settle with Sandman and some other stories, but
it was
to your point, it wasn't 700 billion or whatever it was with Dominion,
right,
which is probably of greater consequence.
So, but if but two things I'm reasonably sure of, since we're talking about feelings, I have a feeling if Joe Biden ever said something like that, you'd be aware of it and you'd be hella bothered by it. So if you're a true enlightened centrist the way you are, you should hold Donald Trump to the same standard, and you should be disgusted and appalled by all the shit that Donald Trump has said, that Joe Biden has not said, and you should recognize that difference.
I polled my audience a couple weeks ago, and I said, relative to the average American, if you had to pick, would you say you identify left or right? And it was just two options. That was it. And it was, I think it was like 300 votes. It was 50-50. So many people say the same thing to me. Paul, as an enlightened centrist, how can you even, first off, why do you call yourself an enlightened centrist? Because it's such a douchey label, which is why I'm switching to politically non-binary. But anyway, it's obvious that, you can't support Trump. And I do agree with you. Like I said, there's just an intuitive framing of it's you arguing with me. And I should have been, again, clear ahead of time. I'm just trying to have a conversation. Like Dave Rubin, I just want conversations. But yeah, so this isn't everything you said sounds very reasonable. I have to do my due diligence.
Sure.
Now
you know what I'll do?
Side. So here's an honest question, test your credibility. Who's the most intelligent conservative commentator on YouTube that you would recommend I talk to and or bring him on
to defend Trump?
Correct.
So I know you like Connor. What's funny is Connor shares my views of Trump. Yeah, so he wouldn't do that. He'd actually, I think, be more on my side than you.
I share a lot of your views with Trump, but it just appears I don't because
I know because you're a contrarian bastard.
Well, I'm only well. Go ahead, but question: who is the most intelligent conservative
to defend Trump? I genuinely don't know because
you see that's interesting to me.
Yeah, so like for example, like I think some people like on the subject of crime, actual justice warriors, your guy. Like there's certain policy areas. When it comes to like defending conspiracy theories and stuff like that, you want Rob Noor. When, counterpoints, I think is like a reasonable right-wing centrist. But again, part of the reason why I think he's reasonable is even though we disagree on a lot, he's made it abundantly clear that he thinks that Trump is an authoritarian who is a threat to democracy. So you're basically asking me, who is the most intelligent, reasonable person to defend the least intelligent, reasonable take? And I'm struggling to answer you. There are remarkable conservative rhetoricians and debaters out there who would kick my ass in a variety of topics. Again, I would not want to debate crime with actual justice warrior, but defending Trump?
Is actual justice warrior pro-Trump?
I don't think he is, but he had a debate with Steven, with Destiny, a couple of months ago, and he took that position. That was the topic. I think he did a terrible job, but he knows his facts. And the reason I think he did a terrible job isn't because I don't think he's up to the challenge per se. I just think that, well, I guess I do think he's not up to the challenge. That it exceeds him. Like as intelligent and as learned as he is, he can't defend that proposition.
Do you agree with the statement that all Trump supporters are dumb or bad or mentally.
I don't think all
disabled?
Trump supporters. I don't think all Trump supporters are bad. So I actually spent most of my life in a red rural state. Most of my family
Are they all
members
dumb?
were conservative. I think their political views are shit.
Okay, I mean that's fair.
No, 100%.
Generally,
let me put it to you like this.
I do not. It's very difficult for me to ever say that anyone's political views, not anyone, clearly the extreme fucking nut jobs on the far right and far left. That's for as much as the Enlightened Centrist bull. It's like I really fucking hate the far right and I really fucking hate the far left. That is critical, and I don't think either side does a good job cleaning up their own crazies. That's one of my fundamental concerns, and we've talked about that previously. But like, it's very easy for me to go, oh, if you're a kind of like Christian conservative, Fox News kind of Midwesterner, it's like it's very obvious to me why you would support Trump. And if you're a kind of a East Coast liberal or whatever, it's like,
how? That's the thing. I don't think it's possible because
most people vote on values and intuition rather than policy facts.
Yes, that's true. But what I'm saying is, like, you to me use the C word, the Christian word. I don't think it's possible for a Christian in good faith to support Donald Trump. That's where I think it.
Yeah, well, certainly the fans of his that hold up images of him literally as Jesus Christ.
Many of whom are self-professed Christians.
Yeah, but I do believe, like, I'm very confident that most people who are Christian and Trump supporters would regard that as like that's going too far. And I know many conservatives, and I've never heard one person say, "Oh, yeah, like that's."
Let me put it to you like
I've never even heard any of them defend January 6th.
I will retract my previous statement because it occurs. I will give you an example of what I think is a good faith argument or reason for a Christian to support Donald Trump, which is
abortion.
Yes, well, kinda. No, it would begin with an admission. He's a terrible person based on all available evidence. True. He is not the second coming. He is not like Jesus. It would come with a list. It would come with a humble list of concessions about Donald Trump's character. And it would be, just at the end of the day, I think that if he were in power and Republicans were in power as a result of him being in power, because the president has such influence, I think there would be fewer aborted fetuses. I think that school prayer would be more likely to be on the table, all these things.
Sure. Yeah.
Though that I could argue, but people who either don't acknowledge his very unchristlike character or worse, pretend it doesn't exist, like they say it actually, no, he is very Christ-like. Yeah, that's really stupid, and I don't have any respect for that. I like to make fun of it.
Fair enough. Me too. Christofascism is for fucking nerds.
Yeah.
Okay. Can we talk about Israel-Palestine?
Sure. We'll have to revisit this, the Biden-Trump thing in the future, because again, I just think that it's...
Yeah, we will. No, in all seriousness.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. And I think it's my internet that's fucky.
No, it's okay.
But I'll actually... Oh, hold on. Are you there?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I think you can hear me fine, but you come in like a robot on my end. So I'm hoping the stream is fine. But anyway, we'll set something up. Okay. And it's not going to be a shit show because I could think of some people who would make it a shit show. But that's not fun for me. I genuinely want to hear both perspectives as an Enlightened Centrist, of course. Okay.
Sure.
Can you hear me? Okay.
I can.
Okay.
Can you see me?
Yes. Do you think that we should cut off aid to Israel if they do not evict the settlers in the West Bank?
I start from the general position that we should conditionalize all aid to every ally, period. I do not believe in a blank check, period. Not for Ukraine.
Which, by the way, I like what Biden has. As my understanding is Biden's been pretty good about, like, yo, Bibi, cut this shit out. We're going to condition aid. That could be all.
I mean, if you ask people, I mean, I consider myself a progressive, but if you ask people more progressive than I am, they would say, no, he's done a terrible job. But others say, yes. I mean, I think the polls show that most Americans are favorable to his position. And it's a tough one. Any president, be it Trump, Biden, whoever, if they were in a situation where Hamas attacked Israel and then had to be the face of and the engine behind U.S. response, it's tough because you're talking about 60, 70 years of baked in consistent foreign policy with respect to Israel. You have the fact that I mean, some of it I think is also Biden's age factoring in. You know, he's thinking of the Reagan 80s, where the perception was Israel was an unconditional ally because, you know, not only because of the Jewish population, but also because Christians as well, they have an attachment to Israel. And I think all those headwinds are hard to fight against. But I don't think any ally, secular, religious,
agreed.
Ukraine,
It's
Israel,
beyond fucked up, in my opinion, that we say no matter what Israel does, we will stand by and we will have our ironclad commitment to them. It's like, are you, what the fuck? What possible reason does that make sense?
As far as I know, that's the only ally with which we have it's essentially codified, or it's expected to be codified, unconditional aid. So as far as like the specific thing about the Israeli settlers, yeah, I think that's at least fodder for conditionalizing aid. I think it's one of many.
Yeah. And I don't want. We'll wrap up here in a few minutes because I'm not interested in debating, and I want to go into the whole thing. Do you think that Israel is committing war crimes?
My gut says yes. But so I'll be honest with you. This is one of the things, if you actually look at my channel, I haven't covered Israel-Palestine much, just in the same way I haven't with Russia and Ukraine. So my focus tends to be like hyper fixated on domestic policy. So I don't want to speak out of turn, but from what I have digested, let me put it like this: if The Hague came out tomorrow and said, "Yeah, we're trying Benjamin Netanyahu,"
and his fucked up,
and what's the guy,
psychopathic Ben Gvir.
Ben Gvir.
This is
war crimes. I would not be surprised at all. I think that a compelling case could be made.
Ben Gvir and the Jewish Power Party sicken me, and anyone who says they sicken me as much. This whole conversation is so fucking fucked up. Hamas is a disgusting group of people, and especially the ones that committed the disgusting crimes.
Sure, of course.
I understand the desire to want to burn someone alive after having watched the videos of Hamas spit on that girl's dead body on the pickup truck that they drove through Gaza. So that's my attitude towards that. When I see the radical religious Jews who are of a particular strain of orthodoxy, because it's not all Orthodox Jews that believe in this. There's a lot of Orthodox Jews who don't even believe that Israel should exist. But when I see them chanting, the particular religious Zionists chanting death to Arabs, where the Jewish Power Party, my rights as a Jew matter more than your rights as an Arab. That's what Ben Gvir said explicitly. Ben Gvir, do you know the Baruch Goldstein thing?
Mm-mm.
Baruch Goldstein was a mass shooter. In 1994, Baruch Goldstein shot up a Palestinian mosque, killed 29 men, women, and children.
And this in the States or in Israel?
In Israel.
Okay.
Baruch Goldstein was his name.
Yeah.
Ben Gvir, who is the current Minister of National Security, I believe is the title, in Israel, had a picture of Baruch Goldstein on his living room wall and hailed him as a hero. That's the equivalent of if Alexander Mayorkas or another top-ranking government official had a picture of Dylan Roof in his fucking living room and said Dylan Roof is a hero. And that disgusts me beyond belief. And I do not believe that people Enlightened Centrist, It's like, yes, fucking Hamas is obviously psychopathic, but
these positions
the extreme religious Zionists are a disgusting problem. The ones who say death to Arabs, the ones who say that a mass shooter is a fucking hero, it pisses me off. As you can tell, clearly. And this is something this is again the Enlightened Centrist dilemma, because it's like, oh, well, why can't you just call it like, oh, we have to call out Hamas and we have to call it really, it's like Hamas clearly did this terrible thing, which they did. So why are you focusing on the Orthodox extremism, the radical Jewish supremacy? Because I think the only way to move through this is to have everyone's valid grievances be acknowledged.
Well, if I were to steelman your position, the reason that you articulate these things is because for you, the analysis doesn't begin in early October, right?
Of course.
It's just
history does not begin on October 7th.
Right, precisely. And you know, honestly, Paul, it's another challenge, especially in the commentary space, because I think sometimes, I mean, it's hard to thread these rhetorical needles, right? Because, you know, like Piers Morgan is somebody who I think he's a really good interviewer, even though I think
I like
his interpretation of American politics is just it's terrible for obvious reasons. He's much more Trump sympathetic than he ought to be, but even there are times that he's good there too. But you know, the meme of beginning an interview with "Do you condemn Hamas?" and you know him constantly saying that his moral quandary is to what limits would you impose Israel's right to defend itself? It's actually, I mean, it's a perfectly valid question, and it's an important question. And I think these things, I mean, they're not mutually exclusive. You can simultaneously and should simultaneously condemn Hamas while also particularly the Netanyahu government. But even how you begin the sentence obviously will turn 50% of the people off. You began criticizing Israel and not with a condemnation of Hamas, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And that is yet another reason why, and you should feel flattered, this is the first time I've talked about this in public, so to speak, because I try not to step out of my quote unquote area of expertise, as douchey as that sounds, but also because I know the tensions.
I call myself
an
Enlightened Centrist.
I know you will always outdouche me. There's no question about that. I appreciate that, but that was never a question.
Yeah.
So I don't envy you. I know you've talked to a lot about this on stream and in debates and on Twitter. Yeah,
I go after what I think is the most controversial issue at any given time. So like you talked about the transgender sports things. It's like, well, okay, the gender issue obviously is very volatile, but my fundamental concern is polarization, and there's two tribes, and it's right and left. And whatever the front line of that issue is by definition the most important one. And the discourse around it then sets the tone of the discourse around everything else. But yeah, this issue in particular, I'm not trying to trap you on anything. Obviously, that's why you would be willing to answer the question to begin with. Yeah, and I don't know. I agree. And even now, I'm, you know, I think like, well, why don't I just sit back and, you know, we can just bitch about. I did a video this morning about League of Legends in the form of politics, which is just
I watched it, but I don't play video games, so I had no idea what the fuck you were talking about. This comp, that comp, whatever. Yeah. I nodded along. It was meticulously edited and delivered. Kudos.
Thank you. Facts. But I think to myself, why don't I just stick to that? Because what the fuck are we? Why even comment about other important things? It's just like, I don't know, and I feel like I am waxing on unnecessarily. So, would you have any final statements on Israel and Palestine? Would you like to resolve the conflict once and for all?
Honestly, we only have like 10 more. I need at least 12 more minutes, so I don't think we can do it tonight.
That's fair.
No, I mean, that's like I said, this is the first time I've spoken about it, quote unquote, on the record. Those are my views. I think it's incredibly. I think the tensions are so high. I mean, we even see it in terms of domestic politics here. We talk about like, not censorship. I mean, there is a degree of censorship, but what's it? Censorship of sitting elected Congress people for the perception that they're, you know, bigoted against, that they're either anti-Semitic or, you know, people on the right saying, you know, bomb Palestine into rubble, like Lindsey Graham, I believe, said stuff like that. So it's tough. And the thing is, you know, if you want to tackle these controversial issues, like I said, kudos to you. People have to do it. You're probably more well-versed on the topic than I am. But the reason that I haven't spoken out about this is because I'm more focused on controversial issues in domestic policy. Yeah. And it's tough, especially when, you know, like I said, I grew up in a red state. Most of my family members and friends are conservative, are Trump supporters. I've got 4 sisters. At least 3 of them voted for Donald Trump twice. And I've got 13 nieces and nephews by them. So it makes for complication. My eldest nephew, God love him, he's a young 18-year-old dipshit. You know, he doesn't know any better, but he's a strident Trump supporter too. So these tensions kind of lace their way through the family. But that's me with domestic politics. Let me ask you, would you say you have personal stakes, family and friends, with respect to the Israel-Palestine conflict?
Yes. Although I wouldn't like to go into it.
Fair enough.
But yes. So yeah, so I'm so glad we could get together. We've always been meant to be together.
I agree. I agree.
And we've been so deep and emotional. Would I so takeaways. We're going to talk again. And there will be another person on this panel. I have to figure out who it is. And I will run it by you first, obviously. No surprises. Sure. Do you know JJ McCullough?
No. I think you've done stuff like I've seen like done videos with him.
You would like him. He's a shill for the military industrial complex, such as yourself. But
why are you bringing me an ally then? Why are you bringing me an ally?
I'm just saying in the future it'd be interesting to bring you on and then bring someone else on. But we'll do that. Okay. We'll have another conversation and I will be very strict moderating and only asking the best Enlightened Centrist.
Like Hannity was, like Sean Hannity was with the Gavin Newsom, Ron
DeSantis. I saw clips of that, but yeah,
it was a 2v1.
What did you? Yeah, what did? Buddy. Yeah. What did?
Yeah.
That, yeah.
Why is California such a shithole? Gavin Newsom, you've got 30 seconds. Ron DeSantis, why is Gavin Newsom and California?
I fucking hate that style of debate. Yeah. Although there was no audience, so that was better. But anyway, so we'll do that, and I'm less Trump curious, and now I'm more. How would you say it? Now I'm more truth curious. Like, okay, well, listen, if everything you said as it was is true, then I would be a fool to be to even consider voting for Trump.
And you are for doing though. That's why I think you're not a fool by nature. And I think this is a phase, man. This is like you being emo. It's just a phase. You're gonna go out of it, and I'm gonna help you do it. Some things I want you to consider.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
Okay, I was gonna say, do you think you'll get more conservative as you grow older?
Hell no. Maybe. I don't know. They say that's a trend, but I've also heard that there's some data which suggests the opposite. That is, as millennials and Gen X have gotten older, they've not really become more conservative. So I don't know. We'll see. What I'll say is this, but honestly, this is where it's hard with labels. Trump isn't a conservative. That's the problem. Trump's a fascist, a cynical fascist with no sense of ideology, right? That's why he was a registered Democrat and a close friend of the Clintons for years, and then he became their most fervent enemies as a Republican. Trump is about Trump, which is part of the problem. I think that, and which kind of leads me with some thoughts here that I really do want you to consider. And if you can't digest them, go back and watch the VOD later. Number one, Trump is a narcissist in a way that Biden isn't. You can disagree with Biden's vision of America, but I don't think Biden's vision of America is all about Biden. Trump's vision for America is all about Trump. Trump has actively talked about eroding civil liberties and civic institutions and crucial things in ways that Biden simply hasn't. Okay, he's made it a concerted part of his agenda. That should bother you. That should be a meaningful difference, which you recognize between these two men. In terms of policy and record, I think Trump's record is much weaker than you realize, and Biden's record is much stronger than you realize. On the things that you say matter most to you, like immigration and foreign policy, fair enough, those are very important things. Then you need to ask yourself what Trump did or didn't do and what Biden did or didn't do to cause these disparate things. Simply saying this happened on Trump's watch or this happened on Biden's watch is insufficient. You have to point to things that were said and done. And then the other thing is I would want you to tell me why so many principled conservatives, people who supported Trump when he was president, voted with him 93% of the time, like Liz Cheney or Adam Kinzinger, why they now say Trump's narcissism and his lack of respect for rule of law and constitutional principles like the peaceful transfer of power, separation of powers, checks and balances have driven them to say that they will vote for Democrats to keep him out of power. I think that's something else to consider. Trump says they're rhinos, but when it comes to record of ideology, they have an infinitely more robust record in terms of rhetoric and votes than Trump himself. So why would they go from supporting him to opposing him? Why would so many of his cabinet officials, his top advisors who supported him, who worked for him, now say he's a fucking idiot and an authoritarian? We don't have these things for Biden. You should ask yourself why. That's what I would leave you with.
I will clip that and send it to whoever I bring on to debate you, and we'll start off with that.
It's probably gonna have to be Trump himself. Josiah, you're such a piece of shit. Yeah.
All right. Well,
do you have any question? Did any of your audience have any hateful remarks or questions?
So I have it up here, and I
Because I can't see, but you shared it. You shared one.
Can you not see the comments? All right, so we are in free form mode, everyone. So if you've got stuff to say it now.
Do you want to share? You clicked something that brought it up under your name.
Oh yeah, I accidentally clicked one. What?
Yeah,
it pulls up. It's on my side here. So if anyone has any questions or points they'd like to make, I can bring it up. Let's go through some of these. Oh, Paul is scared to come back alone. Why not try reading some legislation? That's fair. Am I scared to come back alone, or is Josiah scared to debate a conservative? Tom Cotton said, as far as he's concerned, Israel can bounce the rubble in Gaza. That's disgusting. I agree. Which is another issue. This is the other. It seems like the only issue that every Republican and every Democrat agrees on is that we have an ironclad support. We have ironclad support for Israel. I do respect greatly that the fact that the Squad and some other Democrat politicians have stood up and said this is fucking bullshit. And as far as I know, actually, I think I saw Thomas Massey posted some tweet about like AIPAC and the degree to which the United States just seems to bend the knee to the Israel lobby, which is
I think he was a vote. Wasn't he a
ridiculous
vote on, was it censuring Rashida Tlaib? Was he one of the one Republican holdouts?
Who said no?
Yeah, who opposed
Probably.
it.
He's a libertarian.
So. Yeah.
This has been a great conversation. Well,
I agree, brotherless.
I agree as well. Biden pulled the visas of Israeli settlers who attacked the Palestinians.
I heard that was a recent announcement. Yeah.
That would be good. Let's see if there's anything. Can you not? So you can't see the comments?
So I realized that if you click on comments, that's actually a pretty good way to click on comments. Because I was in private chat and I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So.
Oh, here's a good one. Enlightened for this centrist clearly should be replaced with arrogant dimwit. Like I said, you guys sound like my mother.
How is she, by the way? How's she doing?
My mom's good. She was in a car accident a couple months ago. And she was
That's not good.
For a period of time, but
that's not good at all.
I know, no head injuries.
Oh, good.
So, but thank you for asking.
I'm glad she's recovering.
Yes. He's literally encouraged his lunatic crowd to storm our Capitol. Oh, this is the same person.
Yeah.
Miss T. Marie. Literally shit inside there. It's insane anyone supports him. I agree that it's insane that anyone would say rubbing shit in the Capitol was a productive use of our time.
Before you go to the next comment, because some of these things are like reminding me, two things I want to put on your radar. And honestly, I have most of these links somewhere in a Google Doc, so I'm happy to, because I have to try to keep track of all the shit that I make my 3 videos a day for.
Yep.
So most of the stuff I can get for you. But I will put on your radar that a court in Colorado, like 2 weeks ago, held that Donald Trump, that number one, the January 6th riot was indeed, as a matter of law, this is a legal opinion from a district court in Colorado. So unless it's overturned, it is a legal opinion. The January insurrection riot January 6th riot was an insurrection. Number two, Donald Trump did indeed engage in insurrection by inciting it with his rhetoric. But also, they were agnostic as to whether or not Section 3 of the 14th Amendment disqualifies him because they're not entirely sure it covers presidents, number one. And number two, God damn it, I had it right there. Keep going. You said something earlier that triggered something I wanted to put on your radar, but Trump is an insurrectionist. Trump is an insurrectionist in the eyes of the court. And then there was something else. Keep going. Sorry.
Fair. Genuine question. This is for you. How is Trump connected to the Heritage Foundation? Does he directly endorse their plan?
Hi, Sherry. So the Heritage Foundation has made it explicitly clear that it is for Trump because he's the presumptive nominee. However, they've also made it clear that if he were not, they wouldn't care and they would hand it to anybody who is in a position to execute it. So they even say it in the foreword of Project 2025 that they are doing this irrespective of who the Republican nominee is.
Sorry for my rude comment earlier. You know, this is a theme, Josiah.
What's that?
When someone says in all caps, I'm an arrogant dimwit, or something like that, I always ask, hey, do you want to come and talk to me about it? And almost without failure, people are much kinder.
I think actually she was apologizing for using the word shit to describe the shit on the Capitol.
Okay.
I think she stands by the insert. Yeah,
That's
exactly.
fair.
No.
All right. Well, Miss T. Marie, when Josiah and I and whoever the conservative is, we do our debate, I'll send you a stream link. You can come on and you can tell it to my face. Yeah.
Man, there was something. God damn it. Something about Trump, Biden, Colorado. I'm sorry, keep going.
It's mostly just this centrist guy is a fucking idiot. Fuck this guy. Everyone.
So I should tell you that was me typing all of that on my bot accounts while we were talking. Okay. What would make you choose to, like, can you name something immediately that would make you choose to vote for Biden or any Democrat over Trump or any Republican? I'm just putting you on the spot. This is a
yeah. Open condemnation of Israel, saying we will not send you aid until you evict the settlers.
Interesting. Okay.
That would probably be enough to be like, God damn, okay, Biden has broken from the degree of influence that AIPAC has, and that is a big deal. But go ahead.
Okay, fair enough.
I believe Trump, I do believe if Trump were president, he would say the most ridiculous shit about Gaza too. Burn Gaza to the ground out and all that stuff too.
Yeah.
So
no, fair enough. So the other thing was, you mentioned it earlier, and we didn't get a chance to address this, though. This was one of the things about your Trump curiosity that kind of triggered me reaching out to you. The Ukraine stuff, how each of these two men were involved in Ukraine. Have you had a chance, especially after I presented you the links and everything, did you get a chance to visit any of that? Because you never responded.
No, I did respond. I said, you posted a video, I forget what it was, but I said something like, this video contradicts with my pre-established worldview, therefore I reject it as fake news.
Yeah, I understand.
Which is the advantage of a comedy enlightened centrist perspective. Right. Don't take responsibility for anything. No, what has changed in the update? Or what other updates?
Well, no, so one of the things that you spoke to my buddy Hunter about, Staxiums, who, by the way, if he's watching, is an absolute piece of shit. No, I'm just kidding. I love that guy. You all were talking about Ukraine, and he said, he's not too familiar with Hunter Biden, nor should he. It's why he's happier than me. It's why you're happier than me. I know way too much about domestic politics to be happy. And you said that basically Trump did the same thing. Trump and Biden did the same thing with respect to Ukraine. And then after I watched that video, I responded to you on Twitter, and we had a bit of a back and forth. And then you vanished, probably to edit a video. And I never heard back. But do you, I guess, recognize the meaningful distinction between one man executing official U.S. policy with no concrete benefit to himself versus another man who tried to pressure a foreign country to investigate a domestic political rival? You understand that these are meaningfully different, right?
If those are accurate conceptions, yes.
Fair. Well, they are, so I'll take that as a concession. But
fair enough. I mean, look,
But I guess what I'm saying is that the U.S. pressuring a foreign country is not inherently corrupt. It's perfectly reasonable. Like we talked about, I don't believe in unconditional aid. I think that the State Department, the sitting president, Congress has the right to say, listen, if you want this, you have to give me this. And as long as it's reasonable and not corrupt, I'm fine with that.
Let's, you got 5 more minutes?
Sure.
Okay, let's go for 5 more minutes. Do you worry about civil war?
I do. And here's the thing. It's kind of like how I worry about Trump, not because I think the probability is like 90%, right? Like Ben Shapiro. So Destiny's supposed to have a debate with him in January. And I hope I'm going to do my part to prep him to deliver the TKO to Ben Shapiro's political career. It's going to be my goal.
Yeah. I'm really not a fan of Ben Shapiro as of late.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So Shapiro kind of pisses me off when he was at Oxford the other day. or a couple of weeks ago, and a student asked him about this. He's like, listen, you say that you're an American first and conservative second and then a Republican third and yada, yada. And I know you don't like Trump, but you said you'll back him over Biden if that's what it comes to. And Shapiro's like, yes. And he's like, okay, well, given that Biden, even if you have constituent policy disagreements with Biden, which are perfectly legitimate, Biden hasn't signaled at all that he's a threat to the Democratic Republic in a way that Trump has. And what's interesting is one of the stupid things that Shapiro said is, well, the guardrails held. The guardrails held. And it's like, think of a guardrail.
Yeah, he says the Constitution's a pretty damn durable document.
Right.
I believe.
But again, it's not divinely crafted. It has to be enforced by men of good faith, which is because he believes in a divine document. I'm not entirely sure he appreciates that, number one.
Sure.
Number two,
yeah, that's a good point.
Think of a guardrail. Anytime there's an accident involving a guardrail and the guardrail is warped and twisted or breached, it has to be repaired and reinforced. And we certainly wouldn't let the asshole who drove the car into the guardrail in the first place, wouldn't toss him the keys and say, go ahead, man, it held the first time. So Shapiro's metaphor falls apart. And I feel like this is something that a lot of conservatives and enlightened centrists struggle to refute. It doesn't matter that the guardrails held the first time. That's not a sufficient reason by which to arm the person who tried to breach the guardrails to give them a second chance. It's not. And so that's the probability. I'm not saying that's 90% likely that Trump is going to go through the guardrail. I'm saying that it's above zero and it's above what the threat that Biden poses, which means that I have to take it seriously.
So yes, civil war, probably.
I am
not
concerned,
probably. That's
not probably,
alarmism.
But I'm
that's
more
alarmism.
concerned about civil war than I feel like we should be in 2023 in the United States, the oldest contiguous democratic republic in the history of civilization.
What do you think of Tucker Carlson?
Okay. So, confession.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with You Can't Cuck the Tuck?
Is that a Twitter account?
No, that is a like 45 episode deep compilation on YouTube. I don't even know if it's still up, 10 minutes long a piece. I marinated in it between 2017 and 2019 because I went through a contrarian leftist phase after Donald Trump won the election, where I was obsessed with every culture. You remember when Liam Neeson's movie was boycott because he
said that thing about killing a random black person or something
during the Troubles and things like that, yada yada. I was obsessed over that. Like, you know, he acknowledged that it was a terrible thing to feel and he sought help, and he is openly saying it was disgusting and racist. Why are we punishing him? I was so focused on that shit and not what the sitting president was doing, because I just kind of took it for granted that, you know, Trump was awful, and so I didn't pay attention to him. And so I watched Ben Shapiro and Michael Knowles. Well, I don't think I knew Michael Knowles at the time. So Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson. I bought Jordan Peterson's book. I recommended 12 Rules for Life.
12 Rules for Life is an objectively good book, regardless of your.
I recommended it to my father. And then when it came to Tucker Carlson, I watched every compilation that he would own.
Is You Can't Cuck the Tuck like Tucker Carlson stuff? Okay.
Of course. Yeah.
So now in hindsight, having ingested all of only the positive side of Tucker Carlson, how do you feel about the man?
I think he's an incredibly dangerous and disingenuous media personality. I don't know if he is sincerely racist or white supremacist. There's some evidence based on things I've read from people who worked with him who's like, basically he's a cipher, he's a void, he just regurgitates what he thinks will get him the biggest ratings and whatever. Kind of like what he said, I think, of Bill O'Reilly, ironically enough. I think he's talented. He's funny. He's charismatic. But I think he uses his powers for evil, either for sincere beliefs or for cynical ones. But yeah, I do think he's dangerous.
I thought Tucker Carlson was a proto-fascist. I still kind of potentially do. But my favorite clip of Tucker Carlson is him talking about white nationalists, where he says, there's going to be a point in time where some white person is going to step forward because of all the identity politics and say, I speak on behalf of white people. And I want to tell that person right now, fuck you. You do not speak for me. I'm a grown-ass man, and I don't fucking let anybody speak on behalf of my,
Are you paraphrasing?
Because of my skin color.
Or does he drop those
F-bombs? This is what he says. That's what he says.
Oh, no
verbatim.
shit. Oh,
virtually verbatim. I may have the slight details there, but he says, fuck you.
oh, okay.
And to me, that's an example of him drawing a hard line between him and the ethno-nationalist right. I used to conceptualize the primary threat on the right as being like ethno-nationalist, like white supremacist. That's not the case. It's Christo-fascism. That's the problem. And those are different things.
So what's funny is I don't know how I feel about this. I've done a bunch of videos about Mike Johnson, for example, and I agree with you. He's a Christo-fascist. I think, to me, just evaluating it from a political lens, I think the danger from the right is that they will co-opt their ideology for any person. So, like, for example, I think Donald Trump is more dangerous than Mike Johnson, but Mike Johnson is more intelligent and has, I assume, some sort of coherent set of beliefs and an ideology which motivates him, unlike Trump. And I think that's the danger, that these two, that on paper, kind of like Mike Pence and Donald Trump, should be as antithetical as possible if they stand on principle. And yet they will form unholy alliances, as fascists often do. We saw that, with the Nazis during Hitler's rise as well. I mean, that's part of fascism, where it's not ideologically consistent, and they will work with whoever they need to in order to claim power. I think that's the part on the right that worries me the most, because I see it most prominently on the right. The Republican Party has become like, the polling, you should check out the polling, how more Republicans say they think Trump tells the truth more than their family members, more than their religious leaders, more than their political mentors. We have credible polling on that. We have credible polling which says that not only do they think that Biden stole the 2020 election, but that they value first and foremost in a Republican elected official or candidate loyalty to Trump. It's a cult. And you have former Republicans and former MAGA supporters in droves saying this. It's a cult in a way that the Democrats are simply not. That, to me, is what I see the danger on the right, more than Christo-fascism. What was the danger you see on the left?
Just like it's the technical term that I do think is actually accurate is postmodern neo-Marxism, which is broadly the ideology driving the people on the left to go after like Jewish restaurants and all that shit. The Black Lives Matter chapter that posted the glider, you saw that.
I heard about that, yes. Because the gliders, if I don't want to make sure I understand this correct, gliders obviously were used to attack those southern Israeli cities by Hamas. And then there was a BLM chapter which put the flyer on their flyers, like their propaganda.
Yep.
Yeah.
And called them freedom fighters.
Yeah.
If I cared about optics, I wouldn't use the term postmodern neo-Marxist because it's loaded with such baggage. But I mean, academically, I have a minor in gender studies, and it was based on postmodernism, Foucault, and Karl Marx. But that didn't surprise me at all. That's just a logical extension of their ideology. And that's the kind of stuff that scares me.
You know, when I think of that phrase, of course, obviously I associate it with Peterson. And I say this as a former Peterson fan. I think you're almost as much of a former Peterson fan as I am, which is to say not much at all these days as being a fan of his. Do you ever, I remember being enamored with him, like being so worried about Bill C-16. And as far as I know, which I don't obsessively track it, nobody's been prosecuted under Bill C-16 the way that he feared. Do you think that Peterson got a lot of things wrong? Even if they could have gone a different way, but in terms of how they actually came out, that he got a lot of things wrong.
Just generally speaking?
Sure. Yeah. And then about Bill C-16 in particular.
So Bill C-16, I believe, what was her name? Jessica Yanev or whatever, that the male who wanted to be waxed at like some immigrant spa, that they said no because he's a male, but he identified as trans. And so they brought the complaint in front of the Human Rights Tribunal. I believe that was dismissed.
Wait a minute. Wait, I thought you don't recognize trans people? I know you have like beef with like certain aspects, but like you use
I call Blair White a she. I call ContraPoints a she.
Why he? Is it because I don't remember this person? I don't remember. So is this person a trans woman?
What is a trans woman? That's the problem.
Up.
Well, that's I mean, that's the point. It's like if someone just if a psychopathic narcissistic male who's a sexual predator is in prison,
that's what was that who that person was? Because I don't remember.
Yes, this was a person that you would definitely not defend. You would not want anything to do with, defend, or otherwise in any circumstance. Just take my word on that.
That's fine. I was like, surely.
But your broader point, Bill C-16. I believe there has been cases. I haven't looked into that much because it doesn't. Whether or not he was specifically right about the consequences of that are not as important as the maps of meaning and psychology and philosophy stuff that is at the bottom of that. He is a fucking shill in many ways for Netanyahu. He just rolled over when he was interviewing Netanyahu. He'll debate. He's this, Peterson debates such and such and just, owns, progressives or whatever. And it's like, here comes Netanyahu, arguably the most person deserving of genuine criticism by someone who I would regard as capable of levying those criticisms. And Peterson did not make those. And that was just like, okay, this is weak as shit. My fundamental concern, and I'm not really a politics channel, and I think you know that. It's more culture and philosophy type stuff. I almost never even use the word Democrat or Republican. Like, obviously, it's in that same space,
sure.
but
they're related. They're related. Yeah, they're not the same.
So, yeah, I do like how Peterson's gotten back on his more philosophy and psychology stuff. So,
yeah, he for various reasons. I can't remember when I don't know if there was like a specific point where I just became appalled by him, but certainly his politics, like if I remember correctly, he was a highly reputable clinical psychologist, like with a gazillion citations in academic literature. The problem was, I think he assumed that made him a polymath. And so he doesn't know fuck all about climate change. He is absolutely in defiance of the consensus there. His climate change views are dog shit and always have been. Bjorn Lomborg, one of the most discredited climate change hacks in the history of civilization. And his politics takes suck. They are so bad. But I don't know. And he's also, it seems like he's become angrier. Do you get that vibe? Like when I see clips of him,
course.
Like he is just like
Gabber.
Huh?
Yeah.
What the hell is...
There's a slight delay. Gabor Mate. Do you know Gabor Mate?
No. Who the hell is that?
He is a Marxist psychologist who many years ago, when I was in prime, like Peterson, Peterson's the GOAT. Gabor Mate said, I sense a lot of anger in him. And I was like, okay, what do you know, you Marxist? Now it's like, obviously. And I regard Gabor Mate as one of the leading reliable voices in the whole Israel-Palestine situation.
Gotcha.
So, it's very, I'm very sympathetic to the hate and criticism of enlightened centrism. And I'm aware that it's a slur for a reason.
It is.
But like, it's just that type of example of like, just because someone calls themselves a Marxist, if someone calls themselves a Marxist, it doesn't change my attitude towards them that much at all.
Sure.
Like if they say like, I'm into dialectical materialism and all this like Marxist fundamentalism, okay, then we've got a problem. But most people who call themselves Marxists have never read Marx, in the same way that most people who call themselves Christians have never read the Bible. So I'm not like super concerned.
They just kind of vague, like generally in the direction of like reducing the wealth gap and things like that. Yeah,
exactly. Like if I have problems with capitalism, I have problems with alienation of labor. Right? If you work from home, you can be utterly divorced from the work that you do, which is a serious psychological problem.
So you oppose remote work?
I'm a pro hybrid. I think remote work has its place, and for some people, but I generally prefer to be.
Well, I'll ask you a question offline. But anyway, yeah. If they have any other questions that you
it's been coming. I just good night. Good stuff. Have a good night, everyone. I think that's good.
Appreciate it, brother Los. Appreciate it.
Okay. Paul. Thanks, everyone. This is not by no means the last time.
No, it will be the last time when I personally escort Paul to his voting booth and he comes out, tears in his eyes.
Stuff my ballot for me, like all the Democrats do.
Wait, was that a metaphor? Was that a euphemism?
Listen. Anyway, that's it for today.
On that sexually tense note.
All right, everyone. Thank you much.
Everybody. Thank you.